The cargo bay was dark and quiet. Hayun walked slowly through the rows of containers, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. She held her scanner in one hand, checking the temperature readings for the research specimens. Everything looked normal. Everything was supposed to be normal. It was late at night on Haven's Edge Station. Most people were sleeping. Hayun liked working at this hour. The station was peaceful. No crowds, no noise. Just her and the quiet hum of the machines keeping everyone alive in the empty space outside. She stopped walking. There was a sound. A scratching sound. It came from near the back wall where the new cargo containers sat. Hayun frowned. The station rats sometimes got into the storage areas, but this sounded different. Bigger. She moved closer, holding her scanner up. The screen showed a damaged container marked with red warning labels. The labels were old and faded. Someone had tried to cover the original markings with new ones that said, Industrial Salvage. Hayun had seen this before. When smugglers wanted to hide something, they always used boring labels that no one would check. The scratching sound came again. This time, Hayun heard something else. A small clicking noise, then a soft whimper. Her heart started beating faster. She knew that sound. She had studied it for years in her research. It was the sound young Kralaxians made when they were scared. Hayun looked around the cargo bay. She was alone. She should call security right now. That was the rule. Kralaxians were dangerous. Even the young ones could hurt people. The whole galaxy knew this. Kralaxians were hunters, killers. They had destroyed entire colonies. They had killed her research partner 3 years ago. But Hayun had also studied them long enough to know their sounds. The clicking from inside the container was not aggressive. It was afraid. It was the sound of something small and hurt and alone. She touched the container's lock panel. It was already broken. Someone had forced it open before, probably to check on whatever was inside. Hayun pulled the door slowly. The metal creaked. The clicking sound stopped immediately. Inside the container, 3 small shapes huddled together in the corner. Hayun turned on her light. 3 pairs of eyes stared back at her. They glowed faintly in the darkness like dying stars. The glow was very weak. That meant they were sick or starving or both. 3 Kralaxian cubs. They were each about 4 feet tall, their black shells dull and scratched. Their 6 limbs were thin, too thin. Hayun could see their ribs through the gaps in their armor. The patterns on their shells that should have been bright and glowing were barely visible. One of the cubs had a broken leg. The bone had healed wrong, bent at an odd angle. That cub stayed behind the other 2, watching Hayun with large eyes full of pain and fear. Hayun stood very still. She knew that any fast movement would scare them. Scared Kralaxians attacked. Even young ones had sharp claws and strong jaws. But these cubs did not look like they could attack anyone. They looked like they could barely stand. She thought about what she should do. The right thing was clear. Call Commander Jiwoo. Report the smuggled creatures. Let the professionals handle it. The cubs would be destroyed quickly. It was the safe choice. The legal choice. But Hayun kept seeing their eyes. She kept hearing that scared clicking sound. These were children. Someone had stuffed them in a box and shipped them across space like cargo. They had probably watched their family die. Now they were here, starving and hurt, waiting to either be sold or killed. Hayun slowly took off her thermal jacket. The air in the cargo bay was cold. She would be uncomfortable without it. But the cubs needed warmth more than she did. She held the jacket out toward them, moving very slowly, keeping her eyes down. Looking directly at Kralaxians was a threat. She had learned that in her research the cubs pressed back against the container wall. Their shells made small clicking sounds as they touched each other. They were trying to look bigger, trying to be brave, but they were too weak to be truly threatening. Hayun did not move closer. She just held out the jacket and waited. With her other hand, she pulled a protein bar from her pocket. She always carried food for long work nights. She unwrapped it slowly, the sound loud in the quiet cargo bay. Then she placed it on the ground and stepped back. Time passed slowly. Hayun's arms got tired from holding out the jacket. Her legs hurt from standing still. But she did not move. She barely breathed. She just waited. Finally, the smallest cub moved. It was the one with purple markings on its shell. It crept forward, body low to the ground, ready to run. It grabbed the protein bar with one claw and pulled it back quickly. The other 2 cubs watched. When nothing bad happened, they came forward too. All 3 cubs tore into the protein bar, eating desperately. Hayun set the jacket down on the ground and stepped back further. The cubs finished eating. They looked at the jacket. They looked at Hayun. The purple one clicked softly. It sounded like a question. Hayun sat down on the cold floor. She made herself smaller, less scary. She spoke quietly. Her voice was calm and steady. She did not expect them to understand her words, but they would understand her tone. "It's okay," she said. "I won't hurt you. You're safe. You're going to be okay." The purple cub picked up the jacket in its claws. It pulled the jacket back to the others. They wrapped themselves in it together, sharing the warmth. Their glowing markings got a little brighter. Just a little. But it was something. Hayun watched them. She was making a terrible decision. She knew this. If anyone found out, she would lose her job. She might go to prison. The station had rules about dangerous creatures. Very strict rules, but she was also making the only decision she could live with. She was a scientist. She believed in evidence, not fear. And the evidence in front of her was clear. These cubs were not monsters. They were victims. Hayun stood up slowly. She pulled out her personal data pad, not her official station one. She checked the time. It was 3 hours until the morning shift started. 3 hours to figure out what to do next. She could not leave them here. Someone would find them. She needed to move them somewhere safe. Her laboratory had private sections that were not monitored. She had earned that privacy through years of important research. The station trusted her. She was about to break that trust completely. Hayun took a deep breath. She walked slowly toward the cubs again. They watched her carefully, huddled under her jacket. The injured one made a low warning sound. Hayun stopped. "I need to move you," she said softly. "You can't stay here, but I have a place. It's warm. There's food, medicine, please trust me." The purple cub clicked again. It sounded different this time. Less afraid, more curious. It stood up slowly, still wrapped in part of the jacket. It took one step toward Hayun. Then another. Hayun held out her hand. Not touching, just showing that she meant no harm. The cub came closer. It sniffed her hand. Its breath was warm against her skin. This close, Hayun could see how young it really was. This was a child, a scared, hurt child who had survived something terrible. The cub let Hayun pick it up. It was lighter than it should be. She wrapped it carefully in her jacket, keeping its claws away from her body. The other 2 cubs watched. When nothing bad happened to their sibling, they followed. The one with the pale markings came next. The injured one stayed at the back, limping badly but determined not to be left behind. Hayun carried the small one and walked slowly, letting the other 2 follow at their own pace. They moved through the empty cargo bay, past rows of containers holding legal cargo, past security cameras that Hayun knew how to avoid. She had worked on this station for 7 years. She knew its blind spots. Her laboratory was 6 levels up and half a sector away. It would take 20 minutes to get there. 20 minutes of walking through empty corridors with 3 illegal alien cubs. 20 minutes during which anyone could see them, and her entire life would be over. But Hayun kept walking. She held the small cub close to her chest, feeling its heart beating fast. She whispered to it as they went. Soft words, meaningless words. Just sounds to help it feel less alone. Behind her, the other 2 cubs followed. They stayed close together, moving through the shadows. They were hunters by nature. They knew how to move quietly. They knew how to follow. And for the first time in their short, terrible lives, they were following someone who wanted to help them instead of hurt them. They did not understand this yet. But somewhere deep in their frightened minds, something small and hopeful began to grow. Hayun reached her laboratory door. She used her personal code to unlock it. The door slid open quietly. She looked back at the 2 cubs following her. They hesitated at the doorway, unsure. "Come on," she said gently. "You're home now." The cubs looked at each other. Then they stepped inside. Hayun closed the door behind them. There was no going back now. She had just committed to saving 3 lives that the rest of the galaxy wanted dead. She had no plan, no backup. No idea if this would work. But as she watched the 3 cubs huddled together in the corner of her lab, their dim lights flickering with exhaustion, Hayun knew she had made the right choice. Maybe the stupid choice, maybe the dangerous choice, but definitely the right one. She had work to do. She needed to treat their wounds, feed them properly, make them strong again, and somehow she needed to figure out how to keep them safe in a galaxy that would kill them without a second thought. Hayun rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The night was going to be very long. 3 days had passed. Hayun barely slept. She spent every free moment in her laboratory with the cubs. During work hours, she pretended everything was normal. She attended meetings. She reviewed research data. She smiled at her colleagues and talked about ordinary things. Then she would rush back to her lab and lock the door behind her. The cubs were getting stronger. Hayun had treated their wounds and given them proper food, high-protein supplements mixed with nutrients their bodies needed. The smallest one with purple markings was eating well now. Its shell was starting to shine. The pale one with moon-white patterns had stopped making those scared clicking sounds. But the injured one still would not let Hayun touch it. She watched them from her desk. They huddled together in the corner she had made comfortable for them. Soft padding, warm blankets, a heat lamp. They stayed there most of the time, watching her work. Sometimes the purple one would creep closer, curious about her equipment. The pale one would follow but stay behind its bolder sibling. Hayun talked to them constantly. She told them about her research. About Earth, the planet where humans came from. About the oceans and mountains and forests. She talked about her childhood. About her friend who died 3 years ago. Dr. Reeves was studying a Krylaxian hunting pack, she said one evening. The cubs were listening. She could tell by how their markings changed color slightly when she spoke. She got too close. They saw her as a threat. It happened fast. By the time we got there, it was too late. Hayun looked at the 3 small creatures in her lab. I was angry for a long time. I blamed your species, but you know what I learned? Anger does not bring anyone back, and you are not the ones who hurt her. You are just children who need help. The purple cub clicked softly. It almost sounded like it understood. Maybe it did. Krylaxians were intelligent. Everyone knew that. They just had never been friendly before. On the 4th night, something changed. Hayun was working late again. The station's environmental system had broken down in her sector. The temperature dropped fast. She could see her breath in the air. She wrapped herself in her thermal coat and kept typing her research notes. The cubs made distressed sounds. They were from a hot planet. The cold hurt them. Hayun quickly adjusted the heat lamp to maximum, but it was not enough. The entire sector was freezing. Repair crews would not arrive until morning. Hayun considered going back to her quarters where it was warm, but she could not leave the cubs. They needed the heat lamp, and if she turned it off to save power, they would suffer. She decided to stay. She pulled her coat tighter and tried to focus on her work. Her fingers were getting numb. She had trouble typing. She was so focused on her screen that she did not notice movement near her feet. Not until she felt something warm press against her leg. Hayun froze. She looked down slowly. The purple cub had crawled under her coat. It was curled against her leg, seeking her body heat. She held her breath. This was dangerous. Even young Krylaxians had sharp claws. If it got scared and attacked, it could hurt her badly. But the cub did not attack. It just pressed closer, shivering. Its shell was cold to the touch through her pants. Hayun forced herself to stay still, to stay calm. She kept one hand on her keyboard and let the other rest carefully on the desk. A minute passed. Then, too, the cub's shivering stopped. Its body heat mixed with hers under the coat. Then Hayun felt more movement. The pale cub was crawling under her coat from the other side. It settled against her other leg with a soft clicking sound. Hayun's heart was beating so fast she thought the cubs might feel it. 2 predators were pressed against her body under her coat where she could not see them. If they decided to attack, she would have no defense. She would not even be able to run. But they did not attack. They just lay there, warming themselves. She could feel their rapid heartbeats. They were scared too. Scared of the cold, scared of being alone. They had chosen to trust her with their safety. Hayun kept working with one hand. Or she pretended to work. Mostly she was just trying not to move. Trying not to do anything that might scare them. She typed slowly. She breathed carefully. She waited. The injured cub watched from the corner. Its golden markings flickered in the dim light. Hayun met its eyes briefly, then looked away. She did not want it to feel threatened. It needed to make its own choice. An hour passed. The cubs under her coat had stopped moving. Their breathing was slower now, deeper. Hayun realized they had fallen asleep. They were sleeping against her body, using her warmth. trusting her to keep them safe while they were helpless. Tears came to Hayun's eyes. She did not try to stop them. This moment felt too big for words. In the entire galaxy, humans were known for being soft, weak, too emotional. Other species thought humans cared too much about things that did not matter. They thought human compassion was foolish. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was foolish. But feeling two small lives sleeping peacefully against her, trusting her completely, Hayun thought that maybe human foolishness was not such a bad thing. Movement caught her eye. The injured cub was standing up. It limped slowly across the floor, dragging its bad leg. It came close to Hayun's feet. Then it carefully lowered itself to the ground, positioning its body so it just barely touched her boot, not under the coat with the others, but close, connected. Hayun smiled through her tears. All three cubs had chosen her. They had decided she was safe. They had made themselves vulnerable to her. In a life that had shown them nothing but cruelty, they had found one small corner of kindness and grabbed it with both hands. She sat there for 3 more hours until the heat came back on. She did not move, did not shift position even though her back hurt. The cubs needed their sleep. They needed to feel safe. If staying completely still for 3 hours was what it took, then that was what Hayun would do. When the temperature finally rose to normal levels, the cubs woke up slowly. The purple one crawled out from under her coat first. It looked up at Hayun with those big glowing eyes. Then it made a sound she had never heard before. A soft chirp, not clicking, not threatening, just a gentle sound. The pale one emerged next, making the same chirping sound. Even the injured one lifted its head and chirped softly. Hayun had studied Kralaxian communication for years. She knew what that sound meant. It was the sound cubs made to their parents. It meant safety. It meant family. Hayun reached out slowly. The purple cub did not run. It let her touch its shell. The surface was smooth and warm now. She ran her fingers gently over the purple patterns. The cub leaned into her touch. The pale one came closer, wanting attention too. For the first time since she found them, Hayun let herself feel the full weight of what she had done. She had not just saved 3 lives. She had become responsible for 3 lives. She could not give them to authorities. She could not hide them forever. She needed help. She needed a plan, but right now in this moment, none of that mattered. Right now, she sat on the floor of her laboratory with 3 Kralaxian cubs climbing gently into her lap. They curled up together, making soft, comfortable sounds. Hayun wrapped her arms carefully around them. They let her. They trusted her. "I will keep you safe," she whispered. "I do not know how yet, but I will find a way. I promise." The purple cub chirped again. Hayun decided to give them names. Not their real names. They would choose those themselves when they were older, according to Kralaxian tradition, but private names just for her to use. The purple one would be Bora. The pale one would be Dal. The injured one with golden markings would be Hai. "Bora, Dal, and Hai," she said softly. The cubs looked at her when she said the names. Maybe they understood. Maybe they did not. But it felt right to have names for them. It made them more real. More hers. Hayun knew the next few days would be difficult. She needed to contact Tai Hyun Choi, the merchant who sometimes helped her get supplies without asking too many questions. She needed to be careful. One mistake and everything would fall apart. But for now, she just held the 3 small bodies close. She felt their warmth. She heard their gentle breathing. She memorized this moment because she knew it might not last. The galaxy was not kind to those who were different. It was not kind to those who cared too much, but Hayun was human. And humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy. They were stubborn. They were emotional. They did not know when to give up. Other species thought these were weaknesses. Hayun was starting to think they might be the greatest strengths humans had. The cubs fell back asleep in her arms. Hayun stayed there on the floor with them, her back against the wall, her coat wrapped around all 4 of them. Outside her laboratory, the station continued its normal routines. Ships arrived and departed. People worked and slept and went about their lives. None of them knew that in one small laboratory, something impossible was happening. A human scientist and 3 Kralaxian cubs were becoming a family. It should not work. Everything in nature and society said it could not work. But sometimes the impossible happens anyway. Sometimes love finds a way. Even in the emptiness of space, sometimes trust grows in the darkest places. And sometimes the greatest strength is not in being powerful, but in being brave enough to be gentle. Tae-Hyun Choi arrived at Ha-Yoon's laboratory carrying a large box. He looked tired and annoyed. He always looked annoyed. That was just how his face was. But Ha-Yoon had known him for 4 years. She could tell when he was really upset versus when he was just pretending. Right now he looked actually worried. He set the box down on her desk and stared at her. He did not say anything for a long moment, just stared. "The medical supplies you ordered," he finally said. His voice was very quiet. Very specific medical supplies. The kind used for treating Kralaxian injuries. Ha-Yoon said nothing. She had been careful with her order. Used vague terms. But Tae-Hyun was smart. He dealt with smugglers and criminals every day. He knew how to read between the lines. "Please," Tae-Hyun said slowly. "Please tell me you are not hiding what I think you are hiding." Ha-Yoon made a decision. She needed help. She could not do this alone. Either Tae-Hyun would help her or he would turn her in. She had to trust him. She walked to the storage room at the back of her lab. She opened the door. The 3 cubs were inside, playing with a piece of equipment they had found. Bora was trying to figure out how it worked. Dal watched nervously. Hei stood guard near the door, protective as always. Tae-Hyun saw them and went completely still. His face showed so many emotions at once: fear, shock, anger, and something else. Something Ha-Yoon had hoped to see. Pity. "They are children," Ha-Yoon said before he could speak. "Someone smuggled them here. They were starving, hurt. I could not just let them die." Tae-Hyun rubbed his face with both hands. "Do you know what you have done? Do you understand the laws you have broken? If the station finds out, you will go to prison. They will kill those cubs, and I will probably go to prison too just for bringing you these supplies." "I know," Ha-Yoon said. "I know all of that, but I need help. I cannot hide them forever. I need to get them somewhere safe." Tae-Hyun watched the cubs. Bora had noticed the stranger and moved to stand with the others. All 3 were tense, ready to run or fight. But they stayed near Ha-Yoon. They looked to her for safety. "How long have they been here?" Tae-Hyun asked. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. You have hidden 3 Kralaxians for 2 weeks. On a station with security scanners. With hundreds of cameras. With Commander Kim running security checks every day." Tae-Hyun laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "You are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." "Probably both," Ha-Yoon admitted. Tae-Hyun sighed deeply. He looked at the cubs again. Really looked at them. They were much healthier now than when Ha-Yoon found them. Their shells were shiny. Their markings glowed brightly. They moved with energy and curiosity. They looked like normal children. Children who happened to belong to a species the galaxy feared. "There is a place," Tae-Hyun said finally, "in neutral space. It is called Second Chance. They take in creatures that other places will not accept. Dangerous species. Criminals trying to change, refugees. It is expensive to get there, and the journey is risky, but it is your only option." Hope filled Ha-Yoon's chest. "Can you arrange transport?" "Maybe. I know a captain who owes me favors. But it will take time. At least 10 days to set everything up." Tae-Hyun paused. "And Ha-Yoon? If we do this, there is no turning back. You will be known as the human who helped Kralaxians escape. Some people will hate you for that." "I understand," Ha-Yoon said. And she did. She knew what she was risking. But when she looked at the 3 cubs watching her with trust in their eyes, she knew it was worth it. Over the next week, the cubs grew stronger and more confident. Bora was constantly exploring, getting into Ha-Yoon's equipment, trying to understand how everything worked. Dal was gentler, often pressing against Ha-Yoon's hand when she worked, wanting attention. Haye remained cautious but had started to accept Ha-Yoon's touch when treating the injured leg. Ha-Yoon taught them simple things. How to respond to her voice, how to hide quickly when someone might come to the door, how to be quiet. They learned fast, faster than she had expected. They were incredibly intelligent. She wondered what they might become if they were given a real chance at life. On the 8th day, everything changed. Ha-Yoon was working at her desk when her computer beeped. A message from a technician friend. Just 2 words: "Kim coming. Commander Ji-woo Kim, head of station security." Ha-Yoon's heart stopped. The station had been running security sweeps. They must have detected something. Some trace of the cubs. Some unusual energy reading. Ha-Yoon moved fast. She got the cubs into the shielded specimen container. It would block their biosignatures for a short time. Bora did not want to go in. The cub clicked nervously, not understanding why Hayun was upset. "Please," Hayun whispered urgently. "Please be quiet. Please be safe, just for a few minutes." She got all three inside and closed the container. Then she tried to look normal. She sat at her desk. She pulled up her research files. She took deep breaths. The door chimed. Hayun called out for the person to enter. Commander Kim walked in. She was tall and strong, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore her security uniform and had her weapon at her hip. She looked around the lab slowly. "Dr. Park," she said formally, "we detected some unusual readings in this sector. I am checking all the laboratories." "Of course," Hayun said. Her voice sounded too high, too nervous. She cleared her throat. "I have been running some experiments. Maybe my equipment caused the readings." Jiwoo looked at her for a long moment. They had known each other for years. They were not exactly friends, but they had mutual respect. Jiwoo had always been fair. Strict, but fair. "Hayun," Jiwoo said quietly, using her first name. That was bad. That meant Jiwoo knew something was wrong. "What have you done?" Hayun felt tears coming to her eyes. She could lie. She could make up some story. But she was so tired of lying, tired of hiding, and she knew Jiwoo would find out eventually. The commander was too good at her job. Inside the container, Bora made a distressed clicking sound. Very quiet, but in the silent laboratory, both women heard it. Jiwoo's hand went to her weapon. "Step away from that container." Hayun stood up. She walked to the container. She looked at Jiwoo. They are children. Just children. Someone was going to sell them. I could not let that happen. She opened the container. The three cubs stumbled out, confused and scared. They saw the stranger with the weapon. They saw Hayun's fear. Bora and Dal moved to stand in front of Hayun. Hei positioned itself at her side. They were trying to protect her even though they were tiny compared to the armed human. Jiwoo stared at them. Her hand was still on her weapon, but she had not drawn it. She watched how the cubs stayed close to Hayun, how they looked to her for guidance, how they were clearly more scared than dangerous. "Krylaxians," Jiwoo said softly. "You are hiding Krylaxian cubs. Do you know how many laws you have broken? Do you know what the council will do if they find out?" "I know," Hayun said. "But look at them. Really look at them. They are not monsters. They are scared children who have already suffered too much. I have a plan to get them somewhere safe. I just need a little more time." Jiwoo looked at the cubs for a long time. Bora clicked nervously. Dal pressed closer to Hayun's leg. He watched the commander with wary eyes, ready to fight if needed, despite being badly outmatched. Finally, Jiwoo let go of her weapon. "I should arrest you right now. I should call for backup and have these creatures destroyed. That is what my job requires me to do." "I know," Hayun whispered. "But," Jiwoo continued, "I am also human. And humans have a bad habit of letting our hearts make our decisions instead of our heads." She looked at Hayun seriously. "How much time do you need?" 10 days. Taehyun is arranging transport to Second Chance. Jiwoo closed her eyes and sighed. "Of course Taehyun is involved. That man will get us all killed one day." She opened her eyes again. "You have 10 days. After that, I cannot keep covering the security readings. Someone else will notice. And Hayun?" Her voice became very hard. "If anything goes wrong, if these cubs hurt anyone, I will do my job. I will shoot them. Do you understand?" "I understand," Hayun said. Relief flooded through her. 10 days. They had 10 days. Jiwoo walked to the door. She stopped and looked back. "For what it is worth, I hope you succeed. I hope there really is a place in this galaxy where beings can get second chances. We could all use a little more hope." Then she left. Hayun sank to the floor. The cubs crowded around her, clicking with concern. She wrapped her arms around them and held them tight. They had survived. They had 10 more days. It was enough. It had to be enough. Outside the lab, Jiwoo walked through the corridors. She should report what she saw. She knew that. But she thought about those 3 small cubs trying to protect a human who had saved them. She thought about what it meant to have honor, to have compassion, to be human. She deleted the security readings from her report. She marked the sector as clear. Then she went back to her office and hoped she was making the right choice. Sometimes being human meant breaking the rules. Sometimes it meant trusting your heart even when your head said it was foolish. And sometimes, just sometimes, foolish choices turned out to be the bravest ones of all. Part 5 news traveled fast. Within hours, everyone on Haven's Edge Station knew about the human scientist and her 3 Kralaxian cubs. Within days, the story spread across the galaxy. Some people were amazed. Some were angry. Many were afraid. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. They wanted to discuss what Ha-Yun had done. They wanted to decide if she should be punished or praised. They wanted to determine what this meant for the galaxy's laws about dangerous species. Ha-Yun was summoned to appear before them. Ji-Woo and Tai-Hyun insisted on coming with her. They had helped her. If she was going to face consequences, they would face them together. The council chamber was enormous. Representatives from dozens of species sat in a huge circle. They looked down at Ha-Yun standing in the center. She felt very small, very alone, but she stood straight and tried to look brave. The Xylonian representative spoke first. The Xylonians were an ancient species. They valued order and rules above everything else. Dr. Park has broken numerous laws. She has endangered this station. She has violated treaties. The cubs must be destroyed, and Dr. Park must face punishment. Other representatives nodded. Some looked sympathetic but said nothing. Ha-Yun felt her hope starting to fade. Maybe this had all been for nothing. Maybe the galaxy could not change. Then Ji-Woo stepped forward. If I may speak, council members. I am Commander Ji-Woo Kim, head of security for Haven's Edge Station. I have observed Dr. Park and the cubs closely. What she has done is not dangerous. It is revolutionary. The council members looked interested. Ji-Woo continued. Humans have something that many species do not fully understand. We have the ability to change ourselves. 10,000 years ago, we were violent and tribal. We fought constantly. We killed each other over small things, but we learned. We grew. We built societies based on cooperation instead of conflict. She gestured to Ha-Yun. Dr. Park has shown that other species can do the same. She has proven that even Kralaxians, whom we all fear, can form peaceful bonds if given the chance. This is not weakness. This is strength. The strongest societies are not built by destroying threats. They are built by transforming enemies into allies. A Vexellian historian stood up. The Vexellians were known for their wisdom and long memories. Commander Kim speaks truth. The humans proved that nature is not destiny. They showed us that beings can choose what they become. Perhaps we have been too quick to judge species as irredeemable. The Xylonian representative looked angry. Pretty words do not change facts. Kralaxians are dangerous. They have destroyed colonies, killed thousands. We cannot risk. May I present evidence? Ha-Yun interrupted. Her voice was shaking but clear. The council gestured for her to continue. Ha-Yun pulled up her research on the large displays around the chamber. Brain scans, behavioral studies, genetic analysis. I have spent weeks studying these cubs. Their brains show neuroplasticity far beyond what we documented in adult Kralaxians. Young Kralaxians can develop empathetic neural pathways if they are raised with kindness and stability. She showed more data. Adult Kralaxians are aggressive because they are raised in violent clan structures. They are taught from birth that only the strong survive, that compassion is weakness, but that is culture, not nature. These cubs were given a different experience. They were shown gentleness. They responded with trust. They can be different because they were given a different choice. The council members looked at the data. Some seemed convinced. Others remained skeptical. The chamber filled with arguing voices. Then Ha-Yun did something that made everyone gasp. She activated a communication link. I would like to bring the cubs before the council. Let them see for themselves. Security officers protested. It was too dangerous. The cubs could attack. But Ha-Yun insisted, and Vexthor himself, who was watching the proceedings, gave his formal approval as their former clan elder. The cubs entered the chamber. They were nervous, So many strange beings. So many eyes watching them. Bora stayed close to Hayun's legs. Dal made soft clicking sounds of anxiety. He limped beside them, watchful and protective. The council members leaned back in their seats. Some reached for weapons. The room was tense. One wrong move and this could end in disaster. Bora looked around the chamber. The small cub saw all the fear directed at them, saw all the weapons, felt all the tension. Any normal Krylaxian would respond with aggression, would see this as a threat, would attack or flee. But Bora had learned something different. The cub had learned that fear could be answered with peace. That reaching out was sometimes better than striking back. Bora picked up a small data crystal that Hayun had dropped. The cub carried it carefully across the chamber floor toward the council table. The council members froze. A Krylaxian was approaching them. Even a small one was dangerous. But Bora just set the data crystal gently on the table. Then the cub backed away slowly, making soft, peaceful chirping sounds. It was an offering. A gesture of peace learned from watching Hayun work with other scientists. The chamber was completely silent. Then Dal came forward too, pressing its head gently against Hayun's hand in full view of everyone, showing affection, showing trust, showing that the bond was real. Even Hai, the most cautious, moved to stand. Beside Hayun in a protective but non-threatening stance, the Vexelian historian spoke quietly. I have lived for 300 years. I have never seen anything like this. These cubs have been given a choice, and they have chosen peace. They have chosen family over violence. If this is possible, what else might be possible? The council debated for hours. Hayun waited with the cubs. They eventually fell asleep curled up against her just like that first cold night. She stroked their shells gently and hoped she had done enough. Finally, the council reached a decision. The cubs would be allowed to live. But there were conditions. They must stay under Hayun's direct supervision at all times. They would be monitored constantly, and most importantly, they would become part of something new, the Redemption Protocol. If Hayun could raise the cubs to be peaceful and productive members of society, the protocol would expand to other species considered irredeemable. Other creatures would get the chance these three had received. But if she failed, if the cubs hurt anyone or became violent, the protocol would end immediately. Hayun accepted. It was a huge responsibility. The weight of changing the entire galaxy's approach to dangerous species would rest on her shoulders and three small cubs. But as she looked at Bora, Dal, and Hai sleeping peacefully, she knew it was worth trying. 5 years passed. The cubs grew into adolescence. Bora became a xenolinguistics specialist, using natural Krylaxian communication skills to help different species understand each other. Dal developed into an engineer, combining Krylaxian strength with gentle precision to do repair work that was too dangerous for most beings. Hay trained security officers across the galaxy in non-lethal threat assessment, teaching them what Hayun had taught, that seeing someone as a threat often creates that threat. The Redemption Protocol expanded. More species joined: Fenric hunters, Vex drones, the Nixian warforms, all creatures the galaxy had given up on. All learning that they could be more than their reputations suggested. Not every case succeeded. Some beings could not overcome their nature or their past. But enough succeeded to prove the principle. Change was possible. Growth was possible. Peace was possible. If someone cared enough to try. Hayun's research station became famous. Beings from across the galaxy came to study her methods, to learn how she had done the impossible. She always told them the same thing. I just showed them kindness. I gave them a choice. Everything else, they did themselves. One night, Hayun was working late in her office. She was reviewing applications for the protocol's expansion. The work never ended. There were always more beings who needed help. More creatures who deserved a second chance. She felt movement behind her. Hai entered, now 7 feet tall and covered in scars from security training exercises. The cub she had saved was now larger and stronger than her. Could kill her easily if it chose. But Hai just draped a thermal blanket gently over her shoulders. "You should rest, matriarch," Hai said in its clicking language. Ha-Yun understood without a translator now. They had been together so long that his speech was as clear to her as any human's. Ha-Yun smiled. "I am not your matriarch anymore, Hai. You are an adult now. You could leave any time you want. You do not need me." Hai's bioluminescence shifted to warm amber. The color meant affection. Family. "We chose you once when we were helpless. We choose you now when we are strong. That is what makes it mean something. That is what makes it real." Bora and Dal entered the office too. They were equally large now, equally capable. They could live independent lives anywhere in the galaxy, but they came here every night. They worked beside her. They were family. The four of them sat together in comfortable silence. Ha-Yun at her desk. Bora reading research papers on one side. Dal sketching engineering designs on the other. Hai standing by the door, always protective, always watching. Always. They worked side by side as they had for years. Outside the station, the galaxy continued to struggle with violence and fear. Species still fought. Prejudices still existed. The work of changing minds and hearts would take generations, maybe centuries. But in this room, proof existed that another way was. Bora chirped softly, pulling Ha-Yun from her thoughts. The sound was happy, peaceful, the sound of someone who felt safe and loved. All three cubs made the sound together, a gentle chorus in the quiet office. Ha-Yun smiled and went back to her work. There were more applications to review, more beings who needed help, more lives that could be changed. The work would never be finished. But it was good work, important work. The kind of work that made everything worthwhile. Outside, stars filled the darkness of space. Ships traveled between worlds. The galaxy spun on, vast and ancient and full of wonders. And in one small station on the edge of civilized space, a family worked together. Different species. Same love, same hope, same belief that tomorrow could be better than today. That was the human way. And maybe, just maybe, it was the way that would save them all.